Hello and welcome to another edition of our Sawdust City Happy Hour tastings. Everyone, Marshall Ferguson from Canadian Football Perspective, and of course the CFL on TSN. Another big weekend, week number 13 in the CFL coming at you. And I am very fortunate this week to have the call of the BC Lions in Toronto on Saturday afternoon to take on the Toronto Argonauts. There's lots to be decided in that one. If you are looking for some great beer to enjoy at the Argos tailgate, which by the way is a thing. They do have a tailgate. There are proud Argos tailgaters, and you can, of course, pick some up from the LCBO. And if you're doing so, get it from Sawdust City Beer, okay? Because we want you to enjoy some Sawdust City Beer. And so to give you another fresh idea on all things Sawdust City and what they have available in their lineup today, we are joined by the Brewmaster and co-founder, Sam Corbeil. As always, Sam, you just told me that you were crawling through the freezer, doing inventory. What were you inventorizing?
I was doing hops and some extracts and stuff. It's year end for us on Sunday. So when the brew week ends, because we're not doing it in the weekend, we can get it done on Friday, which is good. We don't have to come in and do that midnight count.
Yes.
To make sure everything. So that's an upside, but standing in the fridge counting boxes of hops isn't exactly fun. But hey, it's a necessary evil.
Part of the business. And I would imagine at some point in your life working in brewing that there have been inventory nights where it's like, hey, we have a little bit of this kicking around. Would you like to enjoy it while we count?
This was in the fridge right beside where I was cutting them. Like, this is easy. Here we go. It was a nice segue.
Excellent. And this that he just referenced is Flapdoodle. Flapdoodle is what we have in front of us. Yeah. What the hell is a Flapdoodle?
Well, Flapdoodle is nonsense. It's a British word for nonsense. And if you read the side, there's a number of different words for nonsense. And when we initially had the name of the beer, we had a different name, and then we thought it might not work out because of reasons that exist in the world today. It wasn't bad. It was just
questioning on the borderline.
And we're like, you know what? It's crazy, but let's not. It's kind of nonsense. And then I thought, what's another word for nonsense? And then I literally Googled all the words for nonsense that like British people have, like claptrap or cod swallop. I mean, there's a bunch of them, but those ones were already taken. There was already beer names with those. So I'm like, I guess we're going with Flapdoodle.
Absurd and foolish things we say when talking absolute bull with each other. And what better way to enjoy this treasured pastime than by bellying up to the bar and jibber-jabbering on about absolutely nothing over a delicious pint of ale. So that's part of what's on the side of Flapdoodle. Now, honest question from a beer lover, but a bit of a beer idiot, which is why I enjoy these conversations. I've always seen ESBs as being kind of like their own kind of thing, right? English special bitters. Is there a difference between an English special bitter and an English best bitter? Like, is there any?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There's varying degrees of bitters. I mean, you can start with a mild. There's like dark milds and ordinary milds, and then you have your bitters and your best bitters and your extra special bitters. We don't do a lot of British styles, and it's out of like the pantheon of styles and country origins of beer in the world. Britain is actually one we've done the least amount of style. It's also because it's the one place I haven't been myself personally, and like I think I've said in the past, like, not having experienced it makes it more difficult to really understand a style. You got to know where it's from to really get it. It feels like you're kind of, faking the funk if you're not actually from there.
Right.
So these are our first kicks of the can in a few different British styles. I'd love to get over there. I haven't been there since I was 5. I mean, I did live there for a year, but I certainly wasn't drinking any beers at the bar. I want to, learn more about it. So, you sort of start with just eking into the style. Last year we did Flapdoodle, but it was more of a blonde bitters. This year we wanted to change it up a bit and play with a little bit more dark malts to give it more of that pub feeling, just a nice ale, like something to sit down and just enjoy. Like, it's 4.5%, not even 4.5, it's 4.4. Lots going on. And we had a new hop from our friends at Charles Ferrum that we were trying out called Most. It kind of gives it a nice berry flavor, I would say, like a red fruit, which works well with the caramelized malts. There's a lot going on for a 4.4% beer, and it's the kind that you can enjoy all day and on a fall afternoon. Just sit back or after counting inventory and have a pint.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate when you say there's a lot going on because I do get a little bit of that red berry kind of taste on the tip of the tongue, and the coloration of it as well. As for anybody who's watching the YouTube version of our interview here, you can see that it's got kind of like that darkish hue, but it's not a blonde, right? It's got a little bit more of that maltiness character and color to it, but it does have almost like a little tiny tint of like an ambery type of look to it when you're kind of going through it. Yeah, it's unique for sure. And the thing that jumped out to me, and I say this a lot, I feel like in these interviews, but super, super smooth. And so I looked at the IBU on the side, it's 30. All right. So it's pretty low and enjoyable. And the smoothness of it was the thing that jumped out to me the most, on top of just enjoying kind of the flavor and the character notes.
Yeah, we actually lagered it for a while. Yeah, because we were going to dry hop it. Then I didn't. If the most hops are actually pretty potent. We didn't add a lot, but they really came out, and we were supposed to dry up it. I'm like, I don't want to mess this. It would have just tasted too hoppy. And British beers are very balanced. They're like, at least traditional British style beers are very balanced, and they're meant to be consumed in the plenty. So like, if it's too hoppy, then it kind of cuts into the drinkability of the beer. So you want to. So we didn't. So we ended up just like letting it sit and cool at 0 for a while, which helps mellow everything out. And I think that it's a very drinkable beer, while you're sitting around, if you're barbecuing or you're making some food or you're just hanging out on the couch on Sunday watching football. This is a great tailgating beer because it's not going to interfere with the third quarter at all. I mean, you got a while to go on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also say that when I've had beers before, and there's been occasional times, Sam, where I've gone to the LCBO, and I've told you this before, I love Formula One. So sometimes I'll go to the LCBO, and if it's the British Grand Prix that weekend, I'm like, well, I'm just going to buy English beers. And I'll go there, and I never really know what truly characterizes the British beer genre or a brand, but I just kind of pick and choose. And sometimes I get like a banana bread beer from over here, or sometimes I get, usually it's kind of like malty, a little bit darker, but it's never really heavy and it's never really high percentage. Is that fair as a characterization of kind of what they have to offer?
They do, like, a lot of them are in the lower, like, milds can start as low as 3. The bitters can be anywhere from 4 to 6. ESBs are sometimes a little bit higher. And I think one of the unfortunate things that has happened at the LCBO in the last couple of years is that when I first started drinking craft beer, there used to be a plethora of British beers, really top-notch British beers that you could get. So I kind of when I was beginning craft beer drinking, I was drinking these British imports. And I remember there was a time where I was like, I'm so sick of these. And then now that they're gone, I'm like, man, I wish we had those. Like, every once in a while, London's Pride, Fuller's London Pride will come back. They used to have the ESB there as well. Those used to be staples, and they're not there now. And every seasonal, there always used to be some nice British beers that would come over. They just seem to not be there anymore. I don't know if that's got to do with, the shipping container issues around the world, whether the pandemic slowed down exporting from Britain, but over the last couple of years, they've just sort of evaporated from the shelf. There's a couple there. You can get some of the rubies from Hobgoblin. There's a couple that you can, but nothing like they used to be.
I personally, I like to blame the Suez Canal for everything and anything at this point. That's my go-to. Even when I don't know what I'm talking about, I just blame the Suez Canal and hope that nobody knows where the Suez Canal is or that it might have any impact on that. But I would also say that when you're talking about English beers, British beers, that having it have that pub feel to it is really important. I actually watched a story on 60 Minutes a couple of weeks ago. You and I have talked about 60 Minutes before and how much we love Andy Rooney and all the rest. But I saw a story on basically an elderly couple that are living, I believe it was in the UK, and they've got an old, tiny town in the countryside in England, and they run a pub, and they don't have cell phones. They don't know what social media is. They don't have cable. They don't show sports there. It's a garden in the back where they've got some tables, and on the inside they sell beer. And the whole premise of the story was, we are what we've always been, and we will always be what we are going to be because we love what we are. And the idea of that really, I do think, applies to a lot of British beers from the outside looking in.
Yeah, well, their pub culture is certainly much different than ours, and it's very rooted in history. And I think one of the things that we don't understand, like, as Canadians, I think we do it's like 75% of the beer we consume is at home and 25% away. It could even be larger gap than that, but it's the opposite in the UK. Most of the beer is consumed out of home, and they go there. You're part of an extended family when you're at the pub, and it's a place you feel comfortable at. The people you talk to, the conversations, the meals you have, and like, if you were drinking beers that were 8-9%, your conversations wouldn't last very long. They might get a little heated a little quicker. So these beers are meant to be communal, and you can enjoy them, and they're not getting in the way of your day and talking and enjoying the afternoon at the pub. It's something I don't think we've ever really. Pub culture is not something that we've really embraced here in Canada. It's there, and you go to the bar, but like as a young person, the bar was someplace you went at night, and you come home. It wasn't a place you'd go to, over there. Sometimes they go on Christmas and Christmas Eve to spend it because that's their extended family. That would be verboten here. Like that would never happen. So, it's different, and I think that not having been there during my beer making experience, I think that's something I feel I can't bring to the table when I make this beer because I don't really understand that pub culture. I'd like to, and I'd like to experience it so I can, it will make its way into the beer and I'll understand it better. It's something that, I always feel is needed when you're making or designing a beer. I can try, but it always feels like disingenuous if you haven't been there or don't understand it.
I respect greatly that you are the Daniel Day-Lewis of Ontario brewers. That you are a method brewer. You feel like you have to be there in the flesh in order to understand exactly how to bring that out. But I totally agree with you on the pub culture because in my peak beer drinking days when you could just throw them back and no consequences, right? When you're younger, and in those days it's like I would go to places in Hamilton like the Snooty Fox in Westdale when I was at McMaster, and you would go there, but it was, well, are we going to go down to Hess? Are we going to go partying? Are we going to go clubbing? Are we going to, it was like, well, maybe if I want to have like a really quiet night, I'll just like go with one of my friends and go to a pub and grab a pitcher and sit down and hang out. But for them, you're right. It's like a communal meeting hall. And I love that vibe. And I think that it is really important to be able to understand that in order to bring it through in its full capacity. And I'll say this as well. I am extremely in favor of Sawdust City just strapping a camera to Sam Corbeil and sending him to England for a week.
I'm in favor of that. I'd love to see that.
I just going, hey Sam, go figure it out and let us see what happens.
Well, there are every culture around the world. They all have these different ties to beer because beer is everywhere, and it's part of that's what makes beer, I think, great is that it is tied to the place and the time that they're from, and by learning about the beer, you learn about the culture almost by just
so true. Yeah.
At the same time. And I mean, eventually down the road, when they look back at the 2020s and the 2015, around that time, they're going to be like the hazy IPA craze, and they're going to look, and it's going to tell you something about our time and how different the beer culture was from even 10 years ago. So I mean, it moves a bit faster now, but it's about a time, it's about a place, and it will tell you the history regardless. So, and this is exactly the type of conversation that Flapdoodle is about. Just sitting around talking about stuff over a pint of beer, and that's the purpose of this beer.
Well, it has mission accomplished then, I would say, with Flapdoodle. And again, if you'd like to be able to pick it or anything else up from Sawdust City Beer, go to sawdustcitybeer.com, and of course follow them on social media at Sawdust City Beer is where you can get it. Delicious and wonderful as always. Sam, thank you for sharing the creation, and you know what, for not being there, it's pretty authentic. Okay.
Cheers. Thanks, buddy.